Welcome back, folks. This is going to be part 3 of our interview with General Vallely, and we have been talking about his career. We talked about his questions vis-a-vis the president and his documentation. We've talked about the Muslim Brotherhood. Let's talk about the future of the United States in terms of internal and external threats. General, what's the biggest external threat that we face?
Well, there's two threats, internal and external. The biggest external threat is actually the threat from our own government, and that's reducing our military capability and our ability to project power in areas of the world where we could go in and effectively, quickly rescue Americans, protect American assets. And what we've done there, Terry, is developed a new strategy for America called the Lily Pad strategy, American Joint Strike Force Operations, and we're working on that strategy right now. So the biggest threat really is our own self not being able to stand and hold and protect America as we did. Now, when you look down the list on that, you've got to look at radical Islam. You also have to look at the incursion in our borders externally, particularly the southern border. We have coastal vulnerabilities. If Iran, for example, decides to put and get a nuclear weapon on one of their Shahab-3 missiles, they can, in fact, deliver that by a freighter 50 kilometers off our shore and do what we call a low-level nuclear attack to freeze our grid system, what they call EMP, electronic magnetic pulse technology. So the EMP is a very big threat to us. So those are the 3 or 4 major external threats. The internal threat, of course, I think, is our own ineffective government and possible financial collapse.
When you look at the debt reaching its 16 trillion and counting, but if you go to Professor Kotlikoff at Boston University, he says our real liabilities are in excess of $222 trillion. And when I look at, as a business guy, when I look at the balance sheet between unfunded liability in Medicare, unfunded liability in Social Security, unfunded liability in veterans benefits, when I look across the board, there's so many trillions of dollars that we've made promises that we have no way to keep. And this most recent sequester where they're going to, quote unquote, cut $600 billion out of the military and then another $600 billion out of civilian spending, that if we cut $60 billion a year for the next decade out of military spending, that effectively cripples the U.S. military, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it's been crippled. And one of my big frustrations, Terry, is the lack of the generals and admirals standing up to be counted. They're not doing it. They're falling in line with Obama. General Dempsey, who to me is an absolute disgrace on being the general that's head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But let me go back to another thread here. I was interviewed by Newsmax regarding the appointment of Kerry and Hagel. And I can tell you the animosity of patriots and veterans against Kerry. When that book was written, Unfit for Command, that was about Kerry. And why we think, especially Congress and the Senate, to go ahead and approve, well, we like John Kerry. But I'll tell you, this guy is totally inept. Chuck Nagel, to me, is clueless. And we need people to head our Defense Department that have a vision of the future, have a strategic view and vision of what our threats are, and be able to organize our military forces to meet those threats. But you see, they do it all backwards today. The way it should be done, and was done in previous years, is that we look at the threats. Then what we do is we organize the forces, whether they be land, air, or sea, to meet those threats in the world. And then you budget to support the organization to meet the threats. That's how logically, with common sense, that you establish the national security for America. And they just don't do it that way. That's why they don't. They're very naive into how to deal with the world as it is today.
And I think it's important to stress that this isn't a policy difference between you and the current administration. This is a strict reading of the U.S. Constitution, the number one job of the U.S. federal government is to protect the citizen, and even in the oath of office, all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's the purpose of the president, the Congress, the whole apparatus of the federal government, is to protect us. And the current approach to assessing the threat and protecting us from the threat is exactly backwards from what it should be. And that's not an issue about politics or policy. That's a violation of the Constitution.
Yeah, and it almost gets to the point of being treasonous when we have the people that we put in government, then the appointees that can follow through. But I can tell you, this administration and many members of Congress do not want to abide by the Constitution.
Oh, yes.
It's old, it's antiquated, doesn't have any value anymore. So that's another battle we have in the United States.
Well,
so to me, this is a call to battle for all the patriots and veterans and the Americans out there to stand up, because we cannot let this country fold the way it's folding right now.
When John Kerry returned from Vietnam and said that he had witnessed atrocities and said that U.S. servicemen had committed atrocities, and when he went through that whole set of Hollywood scripted Hanoi Jane type statements, it amazes me when the SEALs came out against Kerry and the Swift boat folks came out against Kerry and went chapter and verse about how the guy was a glory hog and faked the medals and everything else. As someone who served in Vietnam, when you see Kerry try to act like he is a hawk after what he did upon returning from his service in Vietnam, how do you react to that? What's from just a gut level, as someone who was there and gave honorable service, how do you react to someone like John Kerry?
Oh, very negatively. I mean, the guy is a loser. He he has shown his colors in the past, and that's why he gets upset with your senator down there, John McCain. That's his big buddy and supports him. I mean, it's just unbelievable, these people in the Senate that fall in line and just try to be buddy-buddy when we're looking at the battle for America.
Yeah, it stuns me beyond words. What I have no way to explain the behavior of Senator McCain. I have no way in the world to explain that. And even down to, he's made statements about, oh, well, you can't get upset with Jane Fonda. I got to tell you, I'm not that big a person. If I was in the Hanoi Hilton and they were breaking my shoulders and killing my friends, and Jane was out on one of the anti-aircraft guns kissing those guys, I would carry a grudge. I'm just not a good enough Christian to forgive that.
Well, that's exactly right. But again, the halls of Congress and the Senate, we've got some very good young people coming up through the ranks. I would put a lot more emphasis on supporting our 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds to strengthen them up in Congress and get rid of all this old crowd that's in there. I would just get these guys all the way out of Washington, D.C. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff rumbling in the United States. The fact that I get reports that of course the gun owners of America are very upset, and they will stand up and fight for the Second Amendment. But things like the 5 million person march on Washington in April to surround the White House and Congress, and basically have arrest warrants there. I mean, there's so many things that are being generated that some say, well, we have to put the Constitution aside for 6 months and basically put in a leadership group that can restore America with new elections.
Well,
they know the impeachment process won't work because, just like with Clinton, the Senate won't support impeaching Obama. These are things that are occurring, and something's going to happen in America. I'm not sure what it is, but these people in Washington are really upsetting the grassroots, and I would think the majority of Americans. I think, I don't know what the percentage is, but we still have a lot of clueless Americans out there that just don't have an idea what's going on. They just live their lives, and we look at Phil Nicholson being criticized for stating over the weekend that he has to move from California because his tax rate's 65%. Well, then they put the pressure on old Phil, who's an Arizona guy, and he apologized.
Nah, you can't. I never thought I'd live to see the day that the tax rate in Russia was lower than the tax rate in the United States. General, we got to call it a day. Thank you so much for visiting with us today. Folks, you got to go to Stand Up America, go to his website, find out what's going on, become informed, and if you get a chance, send an email his way and thank him for his service. He's a great American. General, thank you so much for being on with us today.
Hey, thank you.
You bet.